Welcome to Get Rich, the podcast that helps you do just that. Get rich and stay rich. Hey, I'm Molly Benjamin. I'm the founder of Ladies Finance Club, one of Australia's largest financial education platforms for women. But before I started helping thousands of women take control with their money, I was a hot financial mess when it came to my own finances. And not the fun kind of hot, more like crying in a supermarket wondering where all my money went kind of hot. But here's the thing, if I can go from financial mess to owning a share portfolio, investing in property and building wealth, then you can too. My mission is simple, to make women rich. Because when we have financial freedom, we have choices, confidence, and control over our future. Every week on Get Rich, I sit down with some of the best experts in the industry to break down how we can all start investing, growing our money, and creating long-term financial security without the jargon, boring bits, or overwhelm. Because when women get rich, we don't just change our lives, we change the world. So if you're ready to start making some smart money moves, hit that subscribe button and let's get rich together. I had a lady come up to me, and it was a roadshow when we were in Tasmania, and she said, I want to divorce my husband. What do I do? And I was kind of like, you need to speak to a family lawyer first. So what I wanted to do was get Chloe Rattray on the podcast. So she's a top family lawyer from Lander and Rogers. And I wanted her to walk us through kind of like everything we need to know about the legal and financial side of divorce and separation in Australia. Because breaking up is really tough. It's emotional. It can leave women financially devastated. But it doesn't have to be this way. If you follow these steps, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. So we're going to cover what are those exact first legal steps you need to take when separating, what counts as joint property. We're also going to cover how property settlements actually work, dealing with child support, custody, and spousal maintenance, and also what happens when your ex isn't playing fair. The difference between divorce, separation, and de facto. The biggest mistakes Chloe sees women make during a split up, and that one was really interesting. So this is one of those listen before you need it episodes, or maybe one you send to a girlfriend who might be going through a breakup or might be thinking about separation and divorce. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please send it to a girlfriend. And if you haven't yet, sign up to our free online wealth summit. It is happening on the 29th of August. It's a free day full of financial literacy. You can register at ladiesfinanceclub.com. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode. All right, thank you so much, Chloe, for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Molly.
So as mentioned in the intro, this session is all about divorce, separation, and preparing for it. So, Chloe, let's start at the top. What are some of the first legal steps someone should take if they're considering divorce in Australia?
Look, the first things I typically say to people are start collating documents. And when I refer to collating documents, I'm talking about any documents which will help us ascertain what's in the asset pool to be split between these two parties. So what assets are there? What debts exist? That's a really good starting point. And then otherwise, see a family lawyer and get some initial advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So start collecting your data, and yes, which I imagine can be quite tricky to do if someone's been a little bit separated from the finances.
It can. And so for some people, it's just not possible. One of the very first steps when you're working through a property settlement with a client and with couples is that both parties have an obligation to provide what we call full and frank financial disclosure. So both parties are under an obligation to provide a whole lot of these documents to one another. If they don't do it, then there are other avenues we can go down, but each party certainly has that obligation.
And what is the actual difference between separation and divorce, like legally speaking, because they're not the same thing?
No. And okay, so a separation is really just a couple deciding to separate. It happens when one party communicates it to the other. A divorce, and I think what you're really referring to, is a property settlement. So the divorce is simply the dissolution of the marriage. It's really straightforward. You make an application to the family court, a divorce order is made, and your marriage is over. The property settlement, however, is the part where, as family lawyers, we spend most of the time.
Okay, so it's actually the property settlement. So the divorce itself, And I think we've had earlier conversations about this. So that's just like a piece of paper that you sign.
It is. So it's an application before the court seeking to end your marriage, for want of a better word. And you can do that either together, so the parties can apply jointly, or it can be done by either party.
And how long do you need to be separate? Is there a period of time that you need to be separated for before you can actually apply for that divorce?
Yeah, so you need to be separated for 1 year before you can apply for that divorce.
And can you still live in the same house and be separated?
Yeah, you can live under the one roof. You may need to then provide the court with a bit more evidence to show that you definitely have been separated so that they will make that divorce order, but it's certainly possible.
Okay. And then I remember we talked about it on another podcast episode in regards to once that divorce has gone through, you can't then claim anything against that person after a certain period of time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a time limit that starts running. So from the date your divorce becomes official, you have a time limit of 1 year to be able to issue proceedings in the family court to seek a property settlement. And then I should say for de facto couples, so couples who aren't married and a divorce is irrelevant, it's a period of 2 years from the date of separation.
Okay. So that's quite important, I guess, information for people who are like, I'm over this. I just want a divorce. You sign the papers and then you're like, okay, now we need to settle the property. Would your advice be do the property first and then sign the divorce?
Yeah, I typically say to clients, unless there's other reasons not to, my advice is usually get your property settlement done. The divorce is the final tick box at the end.
Yeah. And again, I know we've spoken about this in the past. So when it comes to the divorce, like no two divorces are the same. So what happened to your best friend? It's like maybe it was 50-50. It's going to look very different for you depending on your circumstances. Is it true that all your assets kind of get put into a pot and then divvied up depending on your different circumstances?
Yeah, it's a good way of phrasing it. Honestly, I think if I had a dollar for every time a client said to me, my friend got 70%, so that's what I get, isn't it? I'd be quite a wealthy family lawyer. But anyway, it's what happens is all the assets go into the one pot ready to be divided. And then the court goes through a bit of a pathway. So the next step that it looks at is, well, what are the contributions these parties have made to that asset pool? They'll look at, well, what future needs or future circumstances are relevant to the parties and come up with a percentage for the split.
What's considered joint property in a divorce?
Okay, so joint property is any assets or liabilities held by either party or both parties together, assets held with other parties. That party's interest in that asset could be held within the asset pool. And I guess joint property can really be things like houses, cryptocurrency, shares, bank accounts, super, interest in companies and trusts if it's within the party's control.
Great. And so super makes up part of that split, I'm assuming, during a divorce.
It does, although super's dealt with a little bit differently. More often than not, the property pool, excluding super, will be dealt with in a particular way in terms of the percentage split. And for most mid to long marriages or relationships, a super will almost always be split equally.
Okay. And so let's say you've got your property settlement, like you guys have come up with an agreement. Like, how do you kind of force that agreement to happen?
So once you've got your property settlement, it can be documented in what we call a minute of consent orders, which gets filed with the court, or in a binding financial agreement, which is a private contract prepared outside of the court. And once you've legally documented that, that becomes official. And there's actually real benefits to properly documenting it. Gives you some stamp duty exemptions, capital gains tax rollover relief in certain circumstances.
Awesome. And are there kind of any circumstances where like you do the property settlement and then the person might not actually act the way they're meant to?
Yes, that can happen at times. You are able to bring what's called an enforcement application before the court. So, for example, if part of the terms of the deal was that a house has to be sold and the other party won't sell the contracts and the selling documents. You can make an application to the court for someone from the court to actually sign those documents in place of the other party.
Awesome. Do you have any stories maybe where something like that's happened that you can share, like where a client or maybe that they kind of did the divorce and then they found out later on like, oh, I can't, because it was just they just talked about it, but nothing was on paper?
Oh, so in circumstances where they agreed upon an outcome together, but then it was never actually, yes, yeah, absolutely. So I've once had a situation where a lady came to me and said, look, we did this deal, we sold the house, that's great, but now he's coming to me saying, I need this. And as part of it, she kept one property, but that property had gone up significantly in value during that time. And when we look at the asset pool to be split, we don't look at the value of items at the time of separation, but at the time when the formal settlement goes through. So that property going up in value was a really significant issue for her.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess, does the divorce process change when kids are involved?
It can, because it can impact when I was saying before, when we're looking at those contributions and future circumstances, it can impact the property settlement in terms of what percentage might be appropriate. And then, of course, there's, on top of the property settlement, there's working out parenting arrangements for the children as well.
And I hear a lot, especially through some of our members, like they'll be like, my ex-partner pays $8 a week in child support. So how does the child support get calculated and managed?
So there's a few ways you can deal with child support. The first way is through Services Australia. And you can jump online, there's a calculator, and you can type in all your relevant details and it will spit out and tell you what you or your partner's likely to need to pay. So it looks at things like both of your taxable incomes, the percentage of time you have with the children, their ages. There's this whole complicated formula involved. So that's one way, and Services Australia will collect the funds for you. There are other ways, such as entering into a private contract called a binding child support agreement, which may be more appropriate, particularly if you've got things like private school fees involved, which, quite frankly, the child support calculator just doesn't properly reflect. And then you can even seek what we call departure orders from the court, so effectively child support orders from the court.
And I mean, if someone's divorcing a guy, or, I mean, it's Ladies Finance Club, so I'm going to say a guy, and they've lost their job, they don't have any income coming in conveniently for them, does that mean they pay no support?
Yeah, so if they've got no income, then absolutely. And their other partner does have an income, the other partner would be the one assessed to be paying support.
And what, I guess, legal protections are available for someone experiencing family violence or pervasive control? Again, does that change the situation?
Yes, it can. So as of last month, so from a family law property settlement perspective, as of last month, there are a whole lot of amendments to the Family Law Act, which I guess better take into account some concepts which were there in case law but are now formulated in the legislation. But for anyone dealing with family violence, there's, of course, the ability to seek a family violence intervention order. That's dealt with in the magistrates' court, and it can offer them some protection. It can remove people from homes at times. And then I guess the other thing is that in the family court, there are programs such as what we call the Lighthouse Project, and that identifies high-risk cases and makes sure that they're put into specialised court lists, which are managed by judges and staff trained in trauma-informed practice.
Okay, so there's that help there.
Mm.
So I guess as well, like we're used to seeing the movies and like all divorces end in court, but I know a lot actually, majority end up in mediation. So what's the difference between, and what is mediation and going to court?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think 80% of my clients will actually settle their matter at mediation. So a mediation is like a big meeting with both parties, their solicitors, sometimes barristers as well, and a mediator. And the mediator is usually a former barrister or a former judge. And that mediator is there to move between the rooms and try and broker a deal and settle the matter once and for all.
And for people who don't have a huge amount of money, or for women who are maybe in that situation where their partner's been the earner, but now they're going through a divorce, what options are there for them? Do they have to rely on like legal aid, or does their partner legally have to pay for some of that representation?
Yeah, so if someone doesn't have access to funds, there are a few options. If there is money in the asset pool to be split, they will end up with a property settlement. There are litigation funders who can actually help fund the fees, and then you pay at the end of the matter. We can also make applications to the court to seek that a lump sum of money get paid from one party to another to help meet their legal fees. Mm-hmm. And of course, if someone's not earning any income and the other party is, we can get spousal maintenance support as well.
Okay, awesome. I mean, you do this, you speak to couples and families every day. Like, what would be the main mistakes you see people make? And if you can share any examples as well, that'd be great.
I think some of the main mistakes are things we commented on, which is not properly documenting the settlement. It can be really problematic, as we discussed. Some of the other things I see, particularly in parenting matters, is people not being careful with what they put on social media. So uploading things that could come around to really damage your case in the future. You have to think that could be evidence that's put before the court and a judge may read it.
What would that be like? Like sharing stories of you like out having fun with your girlfriends, or is it more like, what would it be?
Oh, so it can be things like, yes, you're saying on the one hand you have no income whatsoever, and yet you've got a Facebook business page for this candle making business you've got off to the side. Or it could be for parenting, someone who says, well, I don't drink at all. And then there's photos of them off partying on the weekend, text messages, emails, anything that is in writing. Just be really careful.
Awesome. Anything else you'd add to that? The social media one's really interesting though, because I can imagine
it is
not even thinking about that, because you're just like, oh, and then that all of a sudden being used against you in court. God, you'd be pissed.
It really comes down to bite people in the bum, for want of a better word.
Yeah. And then I guess alongside a great family lawyer, what other services, support team do you kind of need on your side?
Yeah, look, for people who need it, there's obviously mental health supports. So psychologists, go off to your GP, get your mental health plan, and that gets you supported access to some free or discounted sessions with various supports. Relying upon your trusted advisors, your financial advisors, your accountants can all play a really big role in helping support you. And there are even things like divorce coaches out there, which for certain clients who really need that extra hand-holding can be really worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we work with a few divorce coaches as well. So ladies, please reach out if you need to be connected. Yeah, very helpful. And Chloe, we've mentioned it in the past, but sometimes people don't even realize they're in de facto relationships. The relationship breaks up and all of a sudden they're being treated like they're in a marriage.
Yeah.
I guess kind of what words of wisdom or advice would you have for people in that situation?
So that's right. I think people often forget that if you're in a de facto relationship, you have the same rights as a married couple to a property settlement. And people often say, well, but I need to be in a de facto relationship for 2 years, don't I, before I can make a claim? And typically the short answer is yes, but you can actually still make a claim if you can show that other contributions have been made by you in that time. So I think even if you're in a de facto relationship, if you're a little bit wary of it, maybe keep your finances separate for the start, just until you are really committed.
Awesome. And finally, what advice do you wish more women knew before starting this whole process?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I wish more people knew to reach out and get advice, firstly.
Yeah.
once you meet with have an initial meeting with a family lawyer, if they have enough information, they can usually give you a pretty good guide as to what your final outcome could be. With that, you can use it to try and do a deal direct. And then the family lawyer's role is really diminished to just having to draw up settlement documents, which is ideal. But I think having knowledge is power in this situation. And so get that initial advice, understand what your future may look like, and then you can really plan to set yourself up.
Yeah, I think that is so important, like that get advice early, because I remember we were doing a roadshow around Australia and one lady came up to me and she was getting separated. She found out her partner was having an affair and the husband had said, let's not get advice. Let's just try and work it out ourselves. She luckily ignored him and then got really good advice that really changed things. And what he was doing by trying to buy time was actually hiding money around and finances. So the fact that she got onto it so early meant that she was in a really good position going forward because she'd got that good advice. And that was actually advice of Landon Rogers as well. So,
oh, there you go. Yes, we've got a great team of lawyers here across Australia.
Yeah. So Chloe, if maybe someone is being like, I think I need to have that conversation, where can they go if they want to learn more about what you guys do?
So they can go directly to our website. We actually have on our website an online inquiry system, which will generate it for you. We will then put you in touch with the right type of lawyer in our team for you. We have lawyers in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. But despite that, act for clients all over Australia and in fact overseas. So family law is a Commonwealth jurisdiction. So it's make an inquiry, reach out to any of us, and we're always happy to assist.
And I believe Landon Rogers has one of the biggest family lawyer teams in Australia, so you will be well looked after.
It absolutely does. Yeah, we really do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and explaining the process of divorce.
No worries at all. Thank you so much for having me, Molly.